Another film I watched in the last week was George A. Romero's Resident Evil. Not an installment in the long running zombie horror series based on the Japanese video game that you would have missed, but a documentary about the first film in the series, looking at the history of George Romero's career as the creator of the zombie movie as we know it, and basically the first commercially successful independent filmmaker. And then also the success of the early installments of the Resident Evil video game series from Japan, originally titled Biohazard, and how they immediately capture people's imaginations. Bringing the two together was a no-brainer when the rights to the film rights rather to the Resident Evil games was picked up by German company Constantin Film. But the film recounts how this didn't work out, how Romero's vision was far more graphic and violent than Constantin wanted, even though they had bought the rights to a graphically violent zombie horror video game series, and how they both ultimately fell apart, and how they went their separate ways, with the Resident Evil movies ultimately being masterminded by Paul W.S. Anderson, and George Romero having a somewhat revival in his career very late on. It's an interesting story, but although the joke is about lengthy meetings that they could have been an email, this feels as though it could have been a long magazine article. The production standard of the documentary is trying for something a bit greater. It's filmed around a spooky mansion, rather like the original game, and interview clips with various experts and almost nobody who was involved in the production play on television sets in otherwise empty, spooky rooms. So there's an attempt at creating a framing narrative and a bit of an atmospheric device. But it never really comes off as more than an elaborate DVD extra. It is interesting, absolutely, and there's clearly a lot of research and effort that's gone into digging out a lot of archive material, a lot of behind-the-scenes material, even comparing different drafts of Romero's script. But it never quite makes the leap to being, this needs to be a film. The Resident Evil series has struggled on in various forms. We got up to 6 films, I think, in the original iteration. There was a reboot a couple of years ago directed by Johannes Roberts, subtitled Welcome to Raccoon City. That didn't seem to go anywhere. There was a Netflix series which vanished without trace. And at the time of recording this review, Zach Kreger has written and directed a new iteration of the series, which I'm very much looking forward to, coming off the back of Barbarian and Weapons. A prestige horror director like that is, I think, the ideal choice to reinvent something like Resident Evil. Romero's career, as I say, he had a late career upswing when zombies became fashionable again. But the film as a whole is interesting. It's well researched, it's well presented, but it never kind of feels like it's a film. It feels like it's a DVD extra with a bit more budget and a bit more time on its hands than you might otherwise expect. It is a story that's interesting, but perhaps not a film that needed to be this kind of